SCP-169. SCP-169, nicknamed the Leviathan, is a creature so massive that an entire archipelago was discovered chilling on its back, and no one noticed until the whole thing shifted 3 kilometers. Turns out the continental drift isn't so continental. It's the Leviathan farting in its sleep. The Foundation stumbled across it after a task force went to investigate weird magnetic signals and ended up realizing the ocean floor had, breathing patterns, which usually means an earthquake is coming, and not, oops, we parked an island chain on a giant shrimp. But that's exactly what happened. The islands aren't islands. They're rocky plates on its back. Estimates put it between 2,000 and 8,000 kilometers long. For Americans who skip geography, that's wider than your entire country. It's thought to be a Precambrian marine arthropod, basically a bug older than bones, still crawling around because God forgot to stomp on it. The USS Tannin went to investigate in 1962. The Foundation recovered 1 transmission. It's not the ocean floor, and that was it. The Foundation's solution? Sink the entire ship. After all, if no one's around to say they saw a continental bug, did it really exist? NASA now removes any satellite footage to hide its movement, since yes, it drifts about 1 kilometer per week, not because it's slow, but because it doesn't need to hurry. Where's it going to go? It's already everywhere. When it moves, satellites glitch, GPS goes wild, and entire coastlines adjust slightly. So the current containment plan is basically don't poke it. The Foundation evacuated claimed territories under the excuse of rising sea levels and protecting endangered birds, and any scientists asking too many questions get relocated. Sea Eater. I wonder what this thing eats. Probably salads, right? The Sea Eater is a fan-created ocean leviathan inspired by Trevor Henderson-style horror, originally posted by user QMBlue on Reddit. It's 25 kilometers long, 5 kilometers tall, and 4.5 kilometers wide. I'm not kidding. Its mouth alone is nearly 5 kilometers tall. For scale, that's almost the size of your mom. And its mouth is always open, just like, never mind. The first recorded sighting was in 1923. A woman named Evelyn Mary spotted a massive blue mountain moving toward shore. Within minutes, she realized it wasn't a mountain. It was a worm so large it seemed to defy physics. It started walking onto land, then suddenly retreated as huge chunks fell from its body, followed by a devastating tidal wave. If you ever encounter it, the tidal wave probably won't be what kills you. It's the sight of the thing itself. The Sea Eater is shaped like a giant sea worm, with 2 massive arms made entirely from dead fish. And its body is coated in thick teal scales tougher than metal. But here's the thing. No one knows if it has a brain, a purpose, or even basic awareness. It's not like it chases boats or terrorizes coastal towns. It just exists. But because it's so large, its very existence tends to kill things by accident. Entire fleets? Gone? Tsunamis? Just a casual side effect. Hotel? Travago. Anyway, when too much of its body breaches the surface, a failsafe called crumbling kicks in, meaning it literally falls apart and has to retreat. So technically, it has a weakness. Unfortunately, that weakness is being on land, which doesn't help you if you're on a boat. The Kraken. So imagine you're a 17th century sailor. You've survived 3 weeks of explosive diarrhea in a shared hammock. You sleep next to a guy named Rotting Jim, and the sea has been quiet for days. Like, too quiet. Then, suddenly, you see land. Or at least you think it's land. But what you encounter instead is much, much worse. You see, this thing isn't just a scary fish story passed around over too much rum. The word Kraken comes from the word crake, meaning a twisted creature, which is exactly what it is. A colossal sea monster the size of your average village, with tentacles thick enough to crush an entire ship. The creature rises from the deep like an island. Sailors, thinking they've scored a nice pit stop, anchor near it, and then watch in horror as the land starts moving. Even worse, it doesn't have to grab your ship. Just surfacing displaces enough water to create a whirlpool strong enough to sink a fleet. So if you see it, you're already about to be flushed like a poopy nugget. For years, people assumed sailors were drunk, bad at navigation, or lying for insurance fraud. Then, in the 1850s, we started finding dead giant squids washing ashore, some over 40 feet long. In 2004, researchers photographed one alive at 60 feet. Turns out Kraken legends weren't myth, just 60-foot calamari that grew big enough to make you the appetizer. Ogopogo. If you assumed the worst thing you'd find in Canada is an impolite goose, you were very, very wrong. Deep in British Columbia, Lake Okanagan is home to a creature that's baffled locals for centuries. Witnesses describe something 40 to 50 feet long, with dark skin, a serpentine body, and a big-ass horse-like head. It glides through the water in smooth, undulating waves, powered by a strong tail and fins, leaving a foamy wake as it speeds across the lake. But long before it became the lake monster with a goofy name, the Silks people knew it as Nha-Itk, a water spirit tied to the lake. And unlike modern lake monster stories that end with grainy photos, Naha-a-Itk came with rules. Want to cross the lake? Bring a blood sacrifice, usually a small animal, sometimes a goat, because, nothing says safe travels, like yeeting a goat into the water. Then came the settlers, who heard water spirit, and immediately rebranded it as a lake demon. They showed up with rifles and slapped on a new name, Ogopogo, borrowed from a 1920s music hall song, presumably to distract from the part where it ate livestock and possibly people. Because while most lake monsters are just blurry shapes in tourist photos, Ogopogo's out here throwing hands. One early settler claimed the creature rammed his canoe and tried to drown him. Others say they've seen it dragging deer underwater from the shore, which raises the question, if you're not safe on land or in the water, where exactly are you supposed to go? Hydra. If there's one piece of advice I can give you, it's don't get headbutted by this thing, because it's got 9 chances to fuck you up. And that number only goes up from there. The Hydra is one of the oldest monsters in Greek mythology. A giant snake-like creature with multiple heads, and every single one's a sorehead. It lives in the swamps near Lerna, and the ground around its lair is so toxic that just standing nearby could kill you. But what makes the Hydra terrifying isn't just its size or its venom. It's the math problem, because if you cut one head off, 2 more grow back. I can't wrap my head around that logic, but the Hydra definitely can. Apparently, it has anywhere from 5 to 100 floating heads, depending on how dramatic the story needs to be. But every version agrees. It's nearly impossible to kill. You see, not only is its stank breath extremely disgusting, it's also extremely toxic. And if the toxic fumes don't get you, its poisonous blood will. The creature's most famous appearance is in the Tale of Heracles, who clearly gets ahead of himself. He shows up, starts chopping heads off, and immediately realizes his mistake. Within minutes, he's facing 50 heads instead of 9. Most people would lose their head over this. But his nephew Iolaios has a solution. Burn the stumps so they can't regenerate. Luckily, that works. Sort of. So yeah, while the Hydra isn't the largest sea monster, it's definitely the one with the biggest exponential growth. Cthulhu, Squidzilla, or whatever his fan base calls him, is a cosmic entity that exists solely to remind you the universe doesn't give a shit about humans. Created by H.P. Lovecraft in 1928, Cthulhu is described as a massive humanoid with an octopus head, bat wings, and a body so wrong that looking at him shatters your brain. Not because he's just that ugly, but because his existence defies the laws of physics we're used to. Long before humans showed up, Cthulhu ruled everything. Then the stars shifted, conditions got unfavorable, and Cthulhu decided he was tired of the cosmic grind. He retreated to R'lyeh, a sunken city deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, and he's been taking a nap there ever since. R'lyeh itself is a nightmare. The city is built with geometry that shouldn't exist, walls that curve in directions our brains can't process, staircases that go up and down simultaneously, and doorways that open into places they shouldn't. Looking at it too long causes physical pain because your mind keeps trying to make sense of angles that simply don't work. But don't worry, the mental pain is even worse. His dreams leak out psychically, infecting sensitive minds worldwide with madness, nightmares, and, naturally, cult worship. Because obviously, humanity's response to existential dread is forming fan clubs. Entire simp cults exist just to prepare for his return, convinced he'll end civilization and notice their devotion. Good luck on getting noticed, though, because Cthulhu exists on a scale so vast that human concepts like morality, mercy, or even acknowledgement don't apply. We are to Cthulhu what bacteria are to us, noticed only incidentally, or not at all. The Leviathan. You know how they say there's always a bigger fish? Well, I think we found it. The Leviathan comes from ancient myth, most famously the Bible, where it was described as a sea serpent so massive and dangerous that no man-made weapon could even scratch it. In the book of Job, God basically boasts about how no human could possibly survive an encounter with it. I mean, can you pull in a Leviathan with a fishhook? I don't think so. Over time, this idea evolved into the gargantuan Leviathan, which means it's not just a beast, but a living natural disaster hiding beneath the waves. It is typically imagined as continent-sized, coiled in the deepest trenches of the ocean. It has a body armored like stone, eyes glowing like lasers, and a presence that literally bends the ocean around it. Storms, whirlpools, and sudden shipwrecks are often blamed on its movement, but they're actually just side effects of that big-ass thing's shifting position. Unlike other sea monsters, the Leviathan does not hunt. It simply exists. Ships are destroyed not out of malice, but because they were in the way. Entire fleets get smashed simply from it rolling over in its sleep. And I bet Greenpeace hates to see this thing coming, since its awakening means boiling seas, coastlines collapsing, and tsunamis tall enough to drown entire cities. But just like Cthulhu, the Leviathan isn't necessarily evil. It's been around since before humans grew bald, and it genuinely doesn't give a shit whether we live or die. So, where Cthulhu represents cosmic horror, the Leviathan is nature's version. It's vast, ancient, and completely out of our control. Lyngbakr. The good news? This sea monster won't attack you. The bad news, you'll die anyway. The Lyngbakr is a legendary sea creature from Old Norse mythology, best known as one of the most dangerous catfish ever imagined, because it kills through deception, not aggression. Its name translates to heatherback, which is exactly what it looks like. A whale so stupidly massive that his back resembles a small rocky island, completely covered in heather, moss, and seaweed. So naturally, sailors see it and think they've struck land. They anchor nearby, disembark confidently, start punching trees for wood, and light fires to cook their catch of the day. Everything seems perfectly fine until it isn't. Because that vegetation they're standing on, that's not an island. That's the Lyngbakr's little moss hat. And when disturbed, say by someone lighting a campfire on its spine, the whale decides it's had enough surface time and dives. Sailors don't even get time to panic. One moment, they're cooking dinner. The next, they're drowning in the middle of the ocean, watching heather float where solid ground used to be. But unlike other sea monsters, the Lyngbakr is actually a very good boy. It doesn't hunt ships or attack fleets. It just exists, floating near the surface, looking exactly like a harmless patch of land. So if humans decided to invade any island they encounter, that's on them. Their death comes not from aggression, but from them making very confident, very wrong assumptions. At its core, the Lyngbakr represents the ocean's true nature. Calm on the surface, lethal underneath. It looks trustworthy right up until it drowns you. And that's why I stay on land. If you made it this far without developing a new phobia, please hit subscribe so I can fix that with the next video.